Maya Rodriguez wiped down another table and glanced at the clock above the bar. Just 3 more hours until her shift ended at the Golden Leaf. Her feet ached in the sensible black shoes she'd bought secondhand, but she pushed the discomfort aside. The tips tonight would help cover next month's sheet music costs if she was lucky. Table 12 needs water refills, called out Devin, the floor manager, as he hurried past with a tray of dirty dishes. Maya nodded and grabbed a water pitcher. The Golden Leaf wasn't just any restaurant in Manhattan. It was the kind of place where dinner reservations were made months in advance, and where the wealthy came to be seen. Crystal chandeliers hung from high ceilings, casting a warm glow over white tablecloths and polished silverware. Maya had been working here for 3 months now, and still sometimes felt like an imposter in this world of luxury. Tonight was especially busy. A section of the restaurant had been cordoned off for a private party, some big tech deal that had been in the news. Maya had caught glimpses of the host, Nathan Chen, the billionaire founder of Next Level Technologies. His face was plastered across business magazines and tech blogs these days after his company's stock had skyrocketed following a breakthrough in artificial intelligence. She refilled water glasses at a table near the kitchen. Maya hummed softly to herself. It was a habit she couldn't break. Music was always playing in her head. Tonight, it was the piece she'd been practicing for her performance assessment at Juilliard next week. The melody helped her stay focused during the chaotic dinner rush. "Hey, Maya," whispered Zoe, another waitress, appearing suddenly beside her. "They need more champagne at the private party. Can you handle it?" "I'm swamped with the corner tables," Maya's stomach tightened. The private section meant bigger tips but also more scrutiny. "Sure thing," she replied, setting down her water pitcher. In the kitchen, the head chef was shouting orders while line cooks moved in a choreographed dance of efficiency. Maya slipped past them to the wine cooler, where the restaurant's sommelier had already prepared a tray of expensive champagne. The bottles sweated with condensation, their golden labels catching the light. "Don't drop these," the sommelier said with a wink. "Each one costs more than we make in a week." "No pressure," Maya laughed nervously, balancing the tray with practiced care. The private section was separated by elegant folding screens, creating an intimate space for Chen's celebration. As Maya pushed through the entrance with her shoulder, she was hit by a wall of sound. Laughter, clinking glasses, and the low hum of deals being discussed. Men and women in designer clothes stood in small groups, their jewelry catching the light as they gesticulated. In the center of it all was Nathan Chen. He wasn't what Maya had expected from the magazine covers. He was shorter in person, with a boyish face that made him look younger than his 38 years. But there was no mistaking the confidence in his stance, the way people naturally oriented themselves toward him like flowers turning to the sun. Maya began circulating with her tray, offering champagne refills with a practiced smile. "Would you care for more champagne?" she asked, moving from guest to guest. Most barely looked at her, taking glasses without pausing their conversations. Maya was used to this invisibility. In restaurants like the Golden Leaf, good service meant being present yet unseen, a contradiction she'd learned to embody. As she approached Chen's group, she could hear him describing his company's latest acquisition. "The board thought I was crazy," he was saying, "but sometimes you have to trust your gut over spreadsheets." His audience nodded appreciatively, hanging on his words. Maya waited for a natural pause before stepping forward with her tray. "Champagne?" she offered. Chen turned, his attention momentarily diverted. "Ah, perfect timing," he said, taking a glass. For a brief moment, his eyes actually focused on her, really seeing her rather than looking through her like most customers did. As Maya continued serving, she found herself humming again, this time, the complex third movement of the Rachmaninoff piece she'd been wrestling with for months. The melody had been stuck in her head all day, its intricate patterns a puzzle. She was determined to solve. She didn't realize. She was humming audibly until she noticed Chen had paused, mid-sentence, and was looking at her. "Again." "Sorry," she said quickly, feeling her cheeks warm. "Didn't realize I was doing that." Instead of being annoyed, Chen seemed curious. "Rachmaninoff, isn't it?" he asked, surprising her. "Piano Concerto No. 3? Now it was Maya who stared. "Yes," she answered, trying to hide her surprise that this tech billionaire would recognize a classical piece. "You know it?" Chen smiled, revealing a dimple in his right cheek. "My mother was a piano teacher. She played classical music in our house constantly. I couldn't escape it if I tried. He glanced toward the corner of the room where a grand piano sat, its lid closed. The Golden Leaf occasionally featured live music on weekends, though tonight it sat silent. "Do you play?" Maya asked before she could stop herself. She knew better than to engage guests in personal conversation. Devon had warned her about this on her first day. "Sadly, no," Chen replied. "My mother's greatest disappointment." He chuckled, then turned to address the group around him. "But clearly our waitress does." Several pairs of eyes turned toward Maya, making her wish she could disappear into the plush carpet. She forced a polite smile. "Just a hobby." "A hobby?" Chen raised an eyebrow, his interest apparently piqued. "That's Rachmaninoff you're humming." "Not exactly Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star." A few people in the group laughed, and Maya felt the spotlight on her intensify. She needed to extricate herself from this conversation before Devon noticed. "I should get back to," she began, but Chen cut her off. "We've been celebrating all evening," he announced, his voice carrying across the private section, causing conversations to pause. "But what's a celebration without music?" He gestured dramatically toward the piano in the corner, and Maya's heart sank as she realized where this was heading. "Maybe our waitress could entertain us with a little tune," Chen suggested, his tone playful but with an edge that made it clear this was more challenge than request. The room fell silent. Maya stood frozen, the half-empty champagne tray suddenly heavy in her hands. She could feel dozens of eyes on her, some curious, others amused, a few uncomfortable with the sudden spotlight on a server. This wasn't the first time a customer had put her in an awkward position. Usually she'd smile politely and find some excuse to move on. But something about Chen's assumption, that casual certainty that she would either embarrass herself or decline and scurry away, lit a small flame of defiance within her. From across the room, Maya caught Devon's eye. Her manager's expression was clear. "Don't do anything that might upset the VIP guests. Just smile and get back to work." But Maya was suddenly tired. Tired of double shifts that left her hands too stiff to practice properly. Tired of wealthy people who saw her as part of the furniture. Tired of putting her dream second to survival. Without fully realizing what she was doing, Maya handed the champagne tray to a startled busboy. The conversation around her had resumed, most guests assuming she would decline the impromptu invitation. Chen himself had already half-turned back to his associates, his challenge seemingly forgotten as quickly as it had been issued. "Actually," Maya said, her voice stronger than she expected, "I'd be happy to play something." Chen turned back, surprise briefly flickering across his face before being replaced by that confident smile again. "Wonderful!" he exclaimed as if he'd expected nothing less. He gestured grandly toward the piano. "The floor, or rather the keys, are yours." As Maya walked toward the piano, she could hear whispers rippling through the crowd. Her heart hammered against her ribs. What was she doing? She could get fired for this. The rational part of her brain screamed at her to turn around, apologize, get back to work. But her feet kept moving forward. The piano bench was cool against her legs as she sat down. Maya took a deep breath and lifted the cover from the keys. The polished ivory gleamed under the chandeliers. She placed her fingers in position, closing her eyes briefly. In that moment, Maya thought about the practice rooms at Juilliard, where she snuck in extra hours when she could. About the second-hand keyboard in her tiny apartment with the broken G key. About the years of lessons her mother had scraped together money for before she got too sick to work. She thought about Nathan Chen, who probably made more money in a day than she would see in years, making a joke at her expense without a second thought. Maya opened her eyes, looked out at the crowd of expectant faces, and began to play. The first notes of Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 3 filled the room. The first notes hung in the air like drops of rain before a storm. Maya's fingers moved across the keys with practiced precision, each note flowing into the next. The opening melody of Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 3 was deceptively simple, a quiet introduction that gave no hint of the complexity to come. The private dining area grew silent. Conversations died mid-sentence. Glasses paused halfway to lips. All eyes turned toward the corner where the waitress in her black uniform sat at the grand piano, her back straight, her focus absolute. Nathan Chen stood with his champagne glass suspended in his hand, his expression shifting from amused expectation to confusion, and then to something else entirely. wonder, perhaps, or disbelief. He had expected a simple tune, maybe some pop song played hesitantly. What he was hearing instead was one of the most technically demanding piano compositions ever written, played with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what they were doing. The piece moved into its development, and Maya's hands began to dance across the keyboard. Her left hand handled the powerful bass notes while her right wove intricate melodies above. Years of practice had built this into her muscle memory, allowing her fingers to find each key without conscious thought. The music poured out of her like water breaking through a dam. Devon, who had been about to intervene, now stood frozen by the entrance to the private section. The restaurant's regular customers had begun to turn in their seats, craning their necks to see who was playing. Even the kitchen staff had paused their work, the clatter of pots and pans momentarily silenced. Maya was no longer in a fancy Manhattan restaurant. In her mind, she was alone in a practice room, wrestling with this piece that had challenged pianists for generations. She felt the music in her body, the tension building in her shoulders, the slight ache in her wrists, the way her foot instinctively moved toward a pedal that wasn't there on this piano. The first movement built toward its climax. Maya's hands flying across the keys in runs that spanned octaves. A strand of hair fell across her face, but she didn't pause to brush it away. She was deep in the flow state that musicians chase. That perfect moment when the boundary between player and instrument disappears. In the crowd, a woman in an expensive blue dress leaned toward her companion and whispered, "Is she actually playing Rachmaninoff?" "That's not possible." Her companion, an older man with silver hair, nodded slowly. "Not just playing it well." Nathan Chen had moved closer to the piano, drawn by what he was hearing. The smirk that had accompanied his challenge was long gone, replaced by an expression of genuine amazement. He watched Maya's hands, noting how they stretched to reach impossible combinations of notes, how her body swayed slightly with the rhythm of the music. As Maya played, memories flickered through her mind, sitting at her grandmother's old upright piano at age 5, feet dangling above the pedals. The first competition she won at 12, her high school music teacher insisting she apply to Juilliard. The crushing weight of her mother's medical bills that nearly derailed everything. The scholarship that saved her dream but didn't cover living expenses. The countless hours spent working instead of practicing. And now here she was, playing one of the most difficult pieces in the classical repertoire for a room full of people who had probably never given a second thought to the struggles of someone like her. As the first movement approached its conclusion, Maya allowed herself a moment of triumph. She had taken Chen's condescending joke and transformed it into something else entirely. For these few minutes, she wasn't just a waitress in a black uniform serving the wealthy. She was an artist commanding their full attention. The final chords of the movement resonated through the room. Maya could have stopped there. She had more than proven her point. But something pushed her forward, into the second movement with its lyrical, almost mournful opening theme. This part of the concerto was less technically flashy but more emotionally complex. It required a different kind of skill, the ability to make the piano sing. Behind her, Maya could hear movement, whispers. The initial shock was wearing off and the room was coming back to life. But the quality of the attention had changed. There was no more background chatter, no clinking glasses or business talk. Everyone was listening. Zoe had appeared beside Devon at the entrance, her mouth slightly open in shock. "Did you know?" she mouthed to him. Devon shook his head, his earlier concern about protocol violations forgotten in the face of what they were witnessing. The restaurant's owner, Mrs. Lopez, had emerged from her office, alerted by the unusual quiet in her normally bustling establishment. She stood at the back, arms crossed, but made no move to stop the impromptu performance. Her expression was unreadable, but there was a slight tilt to her head that suggested calculation. As Maya continued to play, she became aware of phones being raised around the room. People were recording her. In any other circumstance, this might have made her nervous, but she was too deep in the music to care. Let them record. Let them see what a waitress could do. The second movement flowed into the third, the most challenging part of the concerto, with its rapid-fire notes and rhythmic complexity. Maya's hands were beginning to tire, but adrenaline carried her forward. She had never played the entire concerto straight through without a break before. It was usually performed with an orchestra, the pianist given moments to rest while the other instruments took the lead. But here, alone at the piano, she had to carry the entire piece. A small voice of doubt crept in. Was she pushing too hard? Would her technique fall apart in front of all these people? But she pushed the thoughts away. She was committed now. There was nowhere to go but forward. Nathan Chen had not moved from his spot near the piano. He watched Maya with an intensity that was different from his earlier casual interest. There was respect in his gaze now, and perhaps a touch of humility. He was witnessing something extraordinary, and he knew it. The final movement built toward its conclusion, the tempo increasing, the dynamics growing more powerful. Maya's fingers found reserves of energy she didn't know she had. The music consumed her completely now. There was no room for thought, only action and reaction. The physical memory of countless hours of practice guiding her hands. As she approached the final bars, Maya allowed herself to look up for the first time since she had begun playing. The faces watching her were transformed, no longer the distracted, slightly bored expressions of wealthy diners, but the rapt attention of an actual audience. Some had tears in their eyes. Others sat perfectly still, afraid that any movement might break the spell. The final chords thundered through the restaurant, powerful, resolute, triumphant. Maya held the last notes, letting them ring out before slowly lifting her hands from the keyboard. For a heartbeat, there was absolute silence. Then the room exploded with applause. People rose to their feet, clapping and cheering. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. Maya sat stunned at the piano bench, her hands tingling, her breath coming in quick gasps. The physical and emotional toll of the performance hit her all at once, leaving her slightly dizzy. Nathan Chen was the first to approach the piano. He stood before her, shaking his head in disbelief. "That was," he began, then stopped, seemingly at a loss for words, perhaps for the first time in his life. "That was extraordinary," he finally said, his voice quiet enough that only she could hear him over the continuing applause. "I've heard that piece performed by professionals at Carnegie Hall, and they didn't play it with half the heart you just did." Maya didn't know what to say. The confident retort she had imagined while playing, something cutting about not judging people by their jobs, died on her lips. Instead, she simply nodded, still catching her breath. "What's your name?" Chen asked. "Your full name?" "Maya Rodriguez," she answered, suddenly aware that she was still in her waitress uniform, that her hair had fallen loose from its careful bun, that her hands were shaking from exertion. Chen nodded as if committing the name to memory. "Maya Rodriguez," he repeated. "We need to talk. But first," he turned to the still applauding crowd and raised his voice. "I think Ms. Rodriguez deserves another round of applause, don't you?" The cheering grew even louder. Maya stood awkwardly, unsure of the proper protocol for this unexpected situation. She gave a small, embarrassed bow. As the applause finally began to die down, Devin approached, his expression a complex mix of amazement and concern. "Maya," he said quietly, "Mrs. Lopez wants to see you in her office." Maya's heart sank. Despite the applause, despite Chen's praise, she had still broken the rules. Waitstaff didn't commandeer the piano to play classical music in the middle of their shifts. "Now?" she asked, glancing at Chen, who was watching the exchange with interest. "Now," Devin confirmed. Maya nodded, smoothing down her uniform with hands that still trembled slightly from adrenaline and exertion. As she moved to follow Devin, Chen stepped forward. "I'll be waiting to continue our conversation," he said with none of the casual arrogance that had marked his earlier joke. "I have a proposition for you." Maya nodded again, unable to imagine what a billionaire tech CEO could possibly want to propose to a waitress, even one who could play Rachmaninoff. But that was a question for later. Right now, she had to face Mrs. Lopez and the consequences of her impromptu concert. As she walked through the restaurant toward the office, Maya noticed that people were watching her pass, whispering to each other. A few even reached out to touch her arm or shoulder in congratulation. For the first time since she had started working at the Golden Leaf, she wasn't invisible. Whether that was a good thing remained to be seen. Mrs. Lopez's office was a small room at the back of the restaurant, its walls lined with framed reviews and photos of celebrities who had dined at the Golden Leaf over the years. The desk was neat and organized, much like Mrs. Lopez herself, who sat behind it with perfect posture, her salt and pepper hair pulled back in a tight bun. Maya stood before the desk, hands clasped in front of her, waiting for the lecture she was sure was coming. She had violated at least 3 employee guidelines in the past 30 minutes. Sit down. Maya, Mrs. Lopez said, gesturing to the chair across from her. Maya sat, trying to keep her expression neutral despite the churning in her stomach. She needed this job. The tips from the Golden Leaf covered her rent and utilities, while her weekend gig teaching piano to children in Brooklyn helped with groceries and school expenses. How long have you been playing piano? Mrs. Lopez asked, surprising Maya with the question. Since I was 5, Maya answered cautiously. And where did you study? Before Juilliard, I mean. Maya blinked, taken aback that Mrs. Lopez knew she was a Juilliard student. She'd never mentioned it at work. I had a scholarship to the prep program at Manhattan School of Music during high school, she explained. Before that, just local teachers in Queens. Mrs. Lopez nodded slowly. My nephew graduated from Juilliard 3 years ago. Clarinet performance. He works as a sound engineer now. She tapped her fingers on the desk thoughtfully. Why didn't you mention your musical background when you applied here? Maya shifted in her chair. I didn't think it was relevant to serving tables. No? Mrs. Lopez raised an eyebrow. You didn't think it might be relevant that you could play at a professional level in a restaurant that features live music on weekends? Maya felt her face warm. I wasn't trying to hide it. It just didn't come up. Mrs. Lopez studied her for a moment longer, then leaned back in her chair. Our weekend pianist, Mr. Winters, is moving to Chicago next month. His husband got a job at the symphony there. I was going to put an ad in the paper tomorrow. Maya's heart began to beat faster, but she kept her expression carefully neutral. The pay is $200 per night. Friday and Saturday evening, 7 to 11, Mrs. Lopez continued. Plus, you get to keep any tips from the jar. It's not a fortune, but Mr. Winters said it helped him make rent while auditioning for more serious gigs. Are you offering me the job? Maya asked, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. I'm offering you an audition, Mrs. Lopez clarified. This Saturday. But based on what I just heard out there. She nodded toward the dining room. I'd say it's a formality. Can you play jazz standards and pop arrangements or only classical? I can play anything with sheet music, Maya said quickly. And I can improvise in most styles. Jazz, pop, Broadway. I've worked as an accompanist for musical theater workshops. Mrs. Lopez nodded approvingly. Good, versatility is important here. Our customers have varied tastes. She opened a drawer and pulled out a business card. This is Mr. Winters' contact information. Call him tomorrow, he'll share his set lists and tips for the job. Maya took the card, still stunned by this unexpected turn of events. Thank you, Mrs. Lopez, Don't thank me yet, Mrs. Lopez interrupted, raising a hand. You still broke protocol tonight. No matter how talented you are, this is still a high-end restaurant, not a concert hall. Maya lowered her eyes. I understand. It won't happen again. See that it doesn't, Mrs. Lopez said firmly. Then her expression softened slightly. That said, it was quite something to hear Rachmaninoff in my dining room. My late husband would have loved it. He was the music lover in the family. Before Maya could respond, there was a knock at the office door. Come in, Mrs. Lopez called. The door opened to reveal Devin, looking uncomfortable. Sorry to interrupt, Mrs. Lopez, but Mr. Chen is asking to speak with Maya. He says it's important. Mrs. Lopez raised an eyebrow. Is he now? She considered for a moment, then nodded. Tell Mr. Chen he can have 15 minutes with Ms. Rodriguez in the small private dining room. After that, she returns to her duties for the remainder of her shift. Devin nodded and disappeared to deliver the message. Mrs. Lopez turned back to Maya. Whatever he's offering you, remember that consistency is worth something too. Pianists come and go, but steady jobs with health insurance are hard to find in this city. With that cryptic advice, she gestured for Maya to leave. Go on then. Don't keep the billionaire waiting. Maya left the office in a daze, her mind racing. In the span of an hour, her entire situation had changed. She had a piano audition for a weekend gig that would pay better than serving tables, and now Nathan Chen wanted to speak with her. Devin waited for her in the hallway. This way, he said, leading her toward the small private dining room that was used for intimate gatherings. What did Mrs. Lopez say? He asked as they walked. Are you fired? No, Maya said, still processing everything. Actually, she offered me an audition for the weekend pianist position. Devin's eyes widened. Seriously? That's great, though I'll miss having you on the floor. You're the only one who never mixes up the orders. They reached the private dining room where Nathan Chen waited alone, sitting at a small table with 2 glasses of water. The room was intimate, with just enough space for a table that could seat 6, illuminated by a small chandelier. "Good luck," Devin whispered before opening the door for her. "He's been pacing in there for 10 minutes. Maya straightened her uniform and walked in, trying to project a confidence she didn't feel. Chen stood as she entered, his earlier arrogance replaced by an almost boyish energy. "Ms. Rodriguez," he said, extending his hand. "Please sit down." Maya shook his hand, firm grip, warm palm, and sat across from him. Up close, she could see the fine details of his tailored suit, the subtle pattern in the silk tie, the expensive watch on his wrist. His yearly clothing budget probably exceeded her entire tuition. "I owe you an apology," Chen began, surprising her. "My joke earlier was inappropriate and condescending. I made an assumption based on your uniform, not your abilities. That was wrong of me." Maya hadn't expected an apology. She'd encountered plenty of wealthy customers who treated service workers as invisible, and none had ever acknowledged their behavior. "Thank you," she said simply. Unsure what else to add, Chen leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "Where did you learn to play like that?" "Juilliard," Maya answered. "I'm in my 2nd year of the master's program in piano performance." "Juilliard," Chen repeated, nodding as if this confirmed something. "And you work here because Juilliard costs $60,000 a year and my scholarship only covers tuition, not living expenses," Maya said, a hint of defiance creeping into her voice. "And because my mother's medical bills ate through my savings before she passed away last year." Chen had the grace to look abashed. "I'm sorry about your mother," he said quietly. An awkward silence fell between them. "Mr. Chen," Maya finally said, "Mrs. Lopez said you wanted to speak with me about something important?" Chen seemed to refocus. "Yes, right, I have a proposition for you." He paused, as if carefully choosing his words. "I host a charity event each year for my foundation. It raises money for tech education in underserved communities. This year's event is in 3 weeks at the Plaza Hotel." Maya nodded, not sure where this was going. "We always have live music, usually some jazz quartet my assistant books. But this year I'd like something different." Chen's eyes lit up with excitement. "I want you to perform." Maya stared at him. "Perform what?" "Whatever you want. A 30-minute set. Classical, jazz, original compositions, your choice. We'll pay you $10,000. The amount hit Maya like a physical blow. $10,000 would cover her rent for nearly a year. It would allow her to cut back on work hours and focus more on her studies. It would change everything. "Why me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "There are professional pianists you could hire." "Famous ones." Chen smiled, the dimple appearing in his right cheek. "Because you're better than most of them. And because your story is exactly what my foundation is about. Extraordinary talent that needs just a little support to flourish." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card, sliding it across the table. "My personal number is on the back. Call me tomorrow and we'll work out the details." Maya took the card, turning it over to see the handwritten number. This felt unreal, like a movie scene rather than her actual life. "I should tell you," Chen continued, "that many of the guests at this event are potential donors, but also possible mentors and connections. Music school deans, orchestra directors, recording industry executives, people who could help your career." Maya's head was spinning. This wasn't just about money. It was about opportunity, about doors opening that had previously been firmly closed. "Do you need time to think about it?" Chen asked when she didn't immediately respond. Maya looked up from the card. "No," she said firmly. "I'll do it." Chen's face broke into a genuine smile. "Excellent. My assistant will be in touch with the formal details, but I wanted to ask you personally." Maya nodded, tucking the card carefully into her pocket. "Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Chen." "Nathan, please," he said, standing and extending his hand again. "And thank you for saying yes. You've made my charity committee's job much easier. They've been arguing about entertainment options for weeks." As they shook hands, Maya felt a strange sense of realignment, as if the universe had suddenly shifted around her. This morning, she had been a waitress with a student debt problem and a dream that seemed increasingly distant. Now she was a pianist with a high-profile gig and a powerful new connection. "I should get back to work," she said. suddenly remembering that she was still on the clock. My shift isn't over yet, Chen looked surprised. You're going back to serving tables? Tonight after what just happened? Maya shrugged. That's my job. At least until Saturday night when I might have a new one. Admirable work ethic, Chen commented, opening the door for her. Another quality my foundation values. As Maya walked back into the main restaurant, she found that things had mostly returned to normal. Customers were eating, servers were serving. The rhythm of the dining room continuing as if her life hadn't just been completely upended. Zoe rushed up to her immediately. What happened? Are you fired? Did Chen offer you a job? Everyone's talking about it. Maya smiled. A real smile that felt unfamiliar on her face after months of the polite customer service version. I'm not fired. Mrs. Lopez offered me an audition for the weekend pianist position and Chen wants me to play at his charity event. For actual money. Like a lot of money. Zoe squealed and hugged her, drawing curious glances from nearby tables. That's amazing. I told you something good would happen eventually. Maya hugged her back, then gently disengaged. I still have tables to serve, she reminded her friend. And you have customers giving you the where's my check look. Zoe groaned and hurried off, leaving Maya to continue her shift. As she moved through the restaurant, refilling water glasses and clearing plates, Maya noticed that some customers were watching her, whispering to each other. Word had spread. For the first time since she had started working at the Golden Leaf, Maya felt visible, not just as a server, but as herself. Maya Rodriguez, pianist, Juilliard student, daughter of an immigrant who had sacrificed everything to give her this chance. As she worked, the notes of Rachmaninoff still echoed in her mind, along with a new melody, one that sounded remarkably like opportunity knocking. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur for Maya. Her life had suddenly become twice as busy, filled with new responsibilities and opportunities that left her both exhausted and exhilarated. Her audition for the weekend pianist position at the Golden Leaf had been, as Mrs. Lopez predicted, mostly a formality. Mr. Winters, a friendly man in his 50s with kind eyes and nimble fingers, had spent an afternoon with her, sharing his set lists and tips for keeping the restaurant's clientele happy. Rich folks like to think they have sophisticated taste in music, he'd told her with a wink, but play Piano Man after they've had a few drinks, and they'll love you forever. Maya's first weekend as the restaurant's pianist had gone surprisingly well. She'd worn a simple black dress instead of her waitress uniform, her hair loose around her shoulders instead of pulled back in its usual tight bun. The change in outfit had been matched by a change in how people treated her. Customers who had previously ignored her now stopped by the piano to make requests or compliment her playing. Some even recognized her as that waitress from the Chen party and asked for Rachmaninoff, which she obliged during her final set each night. The tips had been good too, better than what she made serving tables. Between the flat fee and the money stuffed into the crystal jar on top of the piano, Maya had made enough in one weekend to cover her rent for the month. But the restaurant gig was only part of her new reality. Preparing for Chen's charity event had become her main focus. After several calls with his personal assistant, a brisk, efficient woman named Valerie, Maya had settled on a 15-minute program of classical pieces followed by 15 minutes of jazz. Standards. Mr. Chen specifically requested that you include the Rachmaninoff, Valerie had told her. He said it made quite an impression on his guests. Today was the day of the charity event, and Maya sat in her tiny apartment staring at the garment bag hanging on her closet door. Inside was a gown, midnight blue with a subtle shimmer, elegant yet understated. It had been delivered yesterday with a note from Chen. Something worthy of your talent. Looking forward to your performance. Nathan. The gesture had left Maya with mixed feelings. On one hand, it was thoughtful. She didn't own anything suitable for performing at the Plaza Hotel. On the other hand, it highlighted the vast gap between their worlds. Chen could buy designer gowns on a whim, while Maya had been nursing the same pair of worn sneakers for 3 years. A knock at her door pulled Maya from her thoughts. It was Zoe, who had insisted on helping her get ready for the big night. I brought reinforcements, Zoe announced as she entered, holding up a makeup bag and a small toolbox of hair products. You're going to look so amazing that Chen will propose on the spot. Maya rolled her eyes. I'm there to play piano, not find a husband. Can't you do both? Zoe teased. setting down her supplies on Maya's small kitchen table. Seriously though, this is huge. The plaza. All those rich people. Someone's bound to discover you. I've already been discovered in a way, Maya pointed out as she filled her electric kettle for tea. That's why I'm doing this gig, Zoe waved dismissively. Chen's just the beginning. Tonight, you'll meet people who can really help your career. Record producers. Broadway people. The works. Maya wasn't so sure. She'd learned long ago not to count on lucky breaks or fairy godmothers. Her mother had taught her that. Hard work and persistence were the only reliable paths forward. Still, as Zoe helped her into the gown hours later, Maya couldn't help but feel a flutter of hope. The dress fit perfectly, making her look like someone who belonged in the glittering world she was about to enter, if only for one night. You look incredible, Zoe whispered, stepping back to admire her work. Like a movie star. Maya turned to the small mirror on her bathroom door. The person looking back at her was both familiar and strange. Still Maya, but polished, elegant, transformed. She took a deep breath, trying to calm the butterflies in her stomach. The car should be here soon, she said, checking the time on her phone. Chen had insisted on sending a car service to pick her up, another gesture that felt both thoughtful and slightly overwhelming. As if on cue, her phone pinged with a text. Your driver has arrived. The drive to the Plaza Hotel was quick, the early evening traffic lighter than usual. Maya sat in the back of the sleek black car, watching the city lights blur past the window, her sheet music secure in a leather folder on her lap. She had practiced her program obsessively over the past weeks, squeezing in hours at the practice rooms between classes, shifts at the restaurant, and her weekend performances. When the car pulled up to the plaza, a doorman in a crisp uniform opened her door. Welcome to the plaza, miss, he said with a professional smile. Maya stepped out, feeling like an actress in a film. The historic hotel loomed above her, its lights warm against the darkening sky. She took another deep breath and walked through the revolving doors into the opulent lobby. A woman with a tablet approached her immediately. Ms. Rodriguez? I'm Valerie, we spoke on the phone. Welcome. She was younger than Maya had expected, perhaps in her early 30s, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. You're right on time. The cocktail hour is underway and you're scheduled to begin your performance at 8. Would you like to see the piano and the space now? Maya nodded, following Valerie through the lobby and toward the grand ballroom. The sound of conversation and clinking glasses grew louder as they approached. Valerie paused at the entrance. Mr. Chen requested that I bring you to him when you arrived, she said. He's speaking with some donors now, but he wanted to personally welcome you. Maya steeled herself and followed Valerie into the ballroom. The space was stunning. Crystal chandeliers hung from high ceilings, casting a warm glow over the well-dressed crowd. Waiters in formal attire circulated with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. In the corner, a small string quartet played quietly, providing background music for the mingling guests. And in the center of it all was Nathan Chen, commanding attention as easily here as he had in the restaurant. He stood with a small group of people, gesturing animatedly as he spoke. Even from a distance, Maya could see the others hanging on his every word. As Valerie led her through the crowd, Maya caught snippets of conversation. Talk of investments, vacation homes, charitable foundations. This was a world where money was assumed, wealth a given rather than a goal. Chen spotted them approaching and excused himself from his group. His face lit up with genuine pleasure when he saw Maya. You made it, he said, taking her hand in both of his. And you look wonderful. The dress suits you. Thank you, Maya said, finding her voice. And thank you for sending it. It was very thoughtful. Chen waved away her thanks. The least I could do. Are you ready for tonight? Before Maya could answer, an older man with steel gray hair appeared at Chen's side. Nathan, the Westbrooks are asking for you. Something about that education initiative in Detroit. Chen nodded. I'll be right there. He turned back to Maya. Duty calls? Valerie will show you to the piano and take care of anything you need. I've arranged for you to have a small room near the ballroom to warm up before your performance. He squeezed her hand once more before releasing it. You're going to be amazing. With that, he was gone, swallowed by the crowd of wealthy donors and influential figures. Valerie led Maya to a magnificent grand piano positioned on a small stage at one end of the ballroom. It was a Steinway, its black surface gleaming under the lights. Maya ran her fingers lightly over the keys, feeling their weight and response. "Perfect," she whispered. "The sound system has been checked, but we can do another test if you'd like," Valerie offered. "And here's your warm-up room." She opened a door near the stage, revealing a small sitting room with an upright piano. "I'll come get you about 10 minutes before you're due to start." Left alone, Maya sat at the upright piano and began her usual warm-up routine, scales and arpeggios to limber up her fingers, followed by quick run-throughs of the trickier passages in her program. The familiar exercises calmed her nerves, grounding her in the music rather than the intimidating surroundings. Time passed quickly, and soon, Valerie was at the door again. "5 minutes, Ms. Rodriguez." Maya nodded and stood, smoothing the blue gown. As she walked back into the ballroom, she noticed that the crowd had grown larger. The string quartet had stopped playing, and the guests were being gently directed toward their seats at the round tables that filled the room. Chen stood at a microphone near the piano, tapping it gently to get everyone's attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, if you could please take your seats. We're about to begin the evening's program." The crowd moved with practiced efficiency, the rustle of expensive fabric and murmur of voices gradually quieting as people settled at their tables. "Welcome to the 5th Annual Next Level Foundation Gala," Chen began, once everyone was seated. "Your generosity tonight will help fund technology education programs for underprivileged youth across the country." He spoke for a few minutes about the foundation's work, highlighting success stories with a storyteller's skill. Maya watched from the side of the stage, impressed by his ability to command the room without seeming arrogant. "Before we move to dinner, I have a special treat for you all," Chen continued. "A few weeks ago, I had an unexpected musical experience that changed my perspective on talent and opportunity." Maya's heart began to beat faster as Chen recounted their meeting at the Golden Leaf, though he told the story with a self-deprecating humor that painted him as the fool rather than her. "I learned an important lesson that night," he concluded. "Never make assumptions about someone based on their circumstances. Talent and genius can be found anywhere, but opportunity is not distributed equally. That's why the work we do at the foundation matters." He gestured toward Maya. "It is my great pleasure to introduce Ms. Maya Rodriguez, a graduate student at Juilliard and one of the most gifted pianists I've ever heard." The applause was polite as Maya walked to the piano. She sat down, adjusted the bench, and took a moment to center herself. The ballroom with its hundreds of wealthy guests faded away. There was only the piano now, only the music waiting to be brought to life. She began with the piece that had started everything, Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 3. Not the entire concerto this time, but the most moving sections arranged for solo piano. Her fingers found the keys with confident precision, drawing forth the complex emotions of the piece: longing, struggle, triumph. As she played, Maya forgot about the designer gown, the Plaza Hotel, the wealthy audience. She was just a musician again, speaking through her instrument, sharing the language that had sustained her through the hardest times of her life. When the final notes of the Rachmaninoff faded, there was a moment of complete silence, that magical pause that comes when an audience has been truly moved. Then the applause began, growing from polite appreciation to genuine enthusiasm. Maya smiled and moved smoothly into the second part of her program. Jazz standards arranged with classical influences, bridging worlds just as she was doing in her own life. By the time she finished her set, the audience was completely with her, the applause immediate and warm. She stood and bowed, her heart full. Whatever came next, whether this was a once-in-a-lifetime experience or the beginning of something more, she had done her best. She had played her truth. As she left the stage, Nathan Chen was waiting for her, his face alight with satisfaction. "You were magnificent," he said. "Just as I knew you would be." Before Maya could thank him, they were surrounded by guests eager to compliment her performance. Among them was a tall woman with silver-streaked dark hair, who introduced herself as the artistic director of a prestigious summer music festival. "We should talk," she told Maya, pressing a business card into her hand. "We're always looking for new talent." Similar encounters followed: a record producer, a composer looking for a pianist to premiere his new work, the dean of a music school in Europe offering information about their international fellowship program. Maya collected business cards in a daze, hardly able to process what was happening. One performance, that was all it had taken to open these doors that had seemed so firmly closed before. As the crowd around her finally thinned and the guests returned to their tables for dinner, Chen appeared at her side again. "Not hungry?" he asked. Maya shook her head. "Too excited to eat," she admitted. Chen smiled. "I remember that feeling. Come with me for a moment. There's something else I wanted to discuss with you." He led her to a quiet corner of the ballroom away from the dining tables. "I've been thinking about our first meeting," he said. "About assumptions and opportunities." Maya waited, unsure where this was going. "The next level foundation primarily focuses on technology education," Chen continued. "But I'm considering a new initiative, one focused on performing arts scholarships for students facing financial hardships." Maya's eyes widened as she began to understand. "Your story is compelling," Chen said. "Working double shifts while studying at one of the world's premier music institutions, dealing with family medical bills, still maintaining the dedication to master something as difficult as Rachmaninoff." He paused. "Would you be interested in helping me develop this program? Your input would be invaluable in creating something that actually addresses the real needs of students like yourself." Yes," Maya stammered. "Of course. That would be amazing," Chen smiled, that same dimple appearing in his right cheek. "Excellent. Valerie will be in touch to schedule a meeting." He glanced toward the dining area. "Now shall we join the others? I believe they're serving dinner and I, for one, am starving." As they walked back toward the tables, Maya felt a strange sense of completion. The circle that had begun with a condescending joke had somehow transformed into something wonderful. Not just for her, but potentially for countless other struggling artists. Sometimes, she reflected, life's most important turning points arrive disguised as its most uncomfortable moments. And sometimes, if you're brave enough to rise to the occasion, what begins as a challenge ends as an opportunity. 1 year later, Maya stood in the wings of Carnegie Hall, her heart pounding in her chest. Through a narrow gap in the curtains, she could see the audience filling the seats, row after row of people who had come to hear her play. Her graduation recital from Juilliard had somehow transformed from a standard student performance into an event, thanks in large part to the connections she had made over the past year. 5 minutes. Ms. Rodriguez whispered, a stagehand, clipboard in hand. Maya nodded, smoothing down the front of her gown. A deep emerald green this time, one she had chosen and paid for herself. So much had changed since that night at the Golden Leaf, when Nathan Chen had jokingly asked her to play the piano. The weekend pianist position had evolved into a regular gig, with Maya playing Thursday through Saturday nights. Mrs. Lopez had even added her name to the restaurant's website and printed menus. Live piano music by Maya Rodriguez. Thursday, Saturday evenings. Regular customers requested her by name and left generous tips in the crystal jar. But the biggest change had come from her work with Chen and the Next Level Foundation. What had started as a casual conversation at the Plaza Hotel Gala had grown into a full-fledged initiative. The Breakthrough Artists Program, providing comprehensive support to talented performers facing financial barriers. Maya had helped design it from the ground up, drawing on her own experiences to address the real challenges that students faced. The program went beyond just tuition assistance, offering stipends for living expenses, funding for instruments and equipment, mentorship opportunities, and performance platforms. The first class of 20 scholars had been selected 6 months ago, and Maya had worked closely with each of them, understanding all too well the obstacles they were trying to overcome. And now, somehow, here she was, about to perform her graduate recital at Carnegie Hall, with the program featuring both classical masterworks and her own compositions. In the audience were not only her professors and fellow students, but also music industry professionals, potential sponsors, and yes, Nathan Chen himself, who had insisted on being there despite having just returned from a business trip to Tokyo that morning. A text message lit up Maya's phone. "Knock 'em dead. We're all in the 3rd row. Zoe." Attached was a selfie of Zoe with Devin and 3 other friends from the Golden Leaf, all dressed up and grinning with excitement. Maya smiled, slipping the phone back into her small clutch purse. Another text came through almost immediately. "Remember, breathe and enjoy every moment. You've earned this, Nathan." Their relationship had evolved into something unexpected. Not romance, as Zoe had jokingly predicted, but a genuine friendship and professional partnership. Chen had turned out to be a surprisingly good mentor. helping Maya navigate the business aspects of her growing career while respecting her artistic independence. 2 minutes, the stagehand whispered. Maya closed her eyes and took a deep breath, centering herself. In her mind, she saw her mother's face, the pride she would have felt seeing her daughter on this stage. "This one's for you, Mom," she whispered. When the stagehand finally nodded, Maya walked onto the stage with measured steps. The spotlight felt warm on her skin, the applause washing over her like a wave. She bowed to the audience, then settled herself at the magnificent Steinway concert grand piano. For a moment, she allowed herself to remember where it all began. The exhausting double shifts, the cramped apartment, the broken key on her second-hand keyboard, the constant worry about money. The feeling of invisibility as she moved through the restaurant in her black uniform, refilling water glasses and taking orders from people who never looked her in the eye. Then she placed her hands on the keys and began to play. The first half of her program was traditional. Bach, Beethoven, Chopin, and yes, Rachmaninoff. She played with the technical precision she had spent years perfecting, but also with the emotional depth that had always set her apart. Each piece told a story of struggle, persistence, beauty found in unexpected places. After intermission, she returned to perform her own compositions, works that blended classical structures with jazz harmonies and Latin rhythms, reflecting her diverse musical influences. The final piece was titled The Waitress, a complex, layered composition that transformed from hesitant beginnings to soaring confidence, mirroring her own journey. As the final notes faded away, there was that perfect moment of silence that artists live for, when an audience is so moved they forget to applaud. Then the hall erupted in a standing ovation, the sound almost physical in its intensity. Maya stood and bowed, her eyes finding familiar faces in the crowd, Zoe and her friends from the restaurant cheering wildly, Mrs. Lopez dignified but clearly proud, her professors from Juilliard nodding with approval, and Nathan Chen clapping with genuine enthusiasm, that now familiar dimple appearing as he smiled. The applause continued as Maya left the stage, only to be called back for 2 encores. By the time she finally made her way to the reception hall for the post-recital gathering, she was floating on a cloud of accomplishment and relief. The reception was crowded with well-wishers, fellow students, professors, music critics, and friends. Maya moved through the room, accepting congratulations and answering questions about her compositions. It was surreal to be the center of attention after so many years of working in the background. "Quite a change from refilling water glasses, isn't it?" came a familiar voice. Maya turned to find Nathan Chen holding 2 flutes of champagne. He handed one to her with a smile. "Sometimes I still can't believe it," she admitted, taking the glass. "A year ago I was worried about making rent. Now I'm performing at Carnegie Hall." "Talent always finds a way," Chen said. "But talent with opportunity moves a lot faster. To your success." He raised his glass in a toast. Maya clinked her glass against his. "And to the Breakthrough Artists program. Did you see Lily's face when I announced the expanded funding? I thought she was going to faint." Lily was one of the program's scholars, a brilliant young violinist from the South Bronx who reminded Maya of herself a few years ago. Earlier that evening, before her performance, Maya had announced that the foundation was doubling the number of scholarships for the coming year and adding a recording opportunity for selected scholars. "That was all you," Chen said. "Your testimony at the last board meeting was what convinced them to increase the budget." Maya shook her head modestly, but she knew he was right. She had found her voice over the past year, not just as a musician, but as an advocate for artists like herself. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a distinguished-looking woman in her 60s, whom Maya recognized as the director of a prestigious summer festival in Europe. "Ms. Rodriguez, your performance was exceptional," the woman said with a slight accent. "I would very much like to discuss the possibility of a residency at our festival next summer." Maya exchanged a quick glance with Chen, who gave her an encouraging nod before discreetly stepping away to give them privacy. These were the kinds of conversations she was having more and more frequently these days. Offers, opportunities, invitations that would have seemed impossible a year ago. As the evening wound down, Maya found herself standing near the large windows overlooking the lights of New York City. She had slipped away from the crowd for a moment of quiet reflection. "Penny for your thoughts," said Zoe, appearing beside her with a plate of tiny desserts. "You looked serious over here." Maya smiled at her friend. "Just thinking about everything that's happened. How one moment changed everything." "You mean when Chen asked you to play at the restaurant?" "That was part of it," Maya agreed. "But the real change was deciding to play, to take that risk instead of just ignoring him and going back to work." Zoe popped a chocolate truffle into her mouth. "That's what I love about your story. You made it happen. Chen may have opened some doors, but you walked through them. You did the work." "We all need help sometimes," Maya said softly. "I just got lucky with who offered it." "Speaking of help," Zoe said, lowering her voice, "did you tell Chen about your idea yet? The community music school?" Maya shook her head. "Not yet. I want to have a more detailed plan first." The idea had been growing in her mind for months. A music school in her old neighborhood in Queens, offering affordable lessons to kids like she had once been. A place where talent could be nurtured regardless of family income. "You should tell him tonight," Zoe urged. "He's in a good mood, and I heard him bragging about you to some fancy-looking people earlier." Maya laughed. "Was he doing the thing where he takes credit for discovering me?" "Of course he was," Zoe said with a grin. "But he also said you were the most talented musician he'd ever met, and that the foundation was lucky to have you." Before Maya could respond, Chen himself appeared, joining them by the window. "What are you two conspiring about over here?" he asked good-naturedly. "Maya has something to tell you," Zoe said promptly, ignoring Maya's warning glance. "About a new project." Chen raised an eyebrow, looking intrigued. "I'm all ears." With Zoe nudging her encouragingly, Maya found herself outlining her vision for the community music school, a place that would combine quality education with accessibility, bridging the gap that kept so many talented kids from pursuing music. As she spoke, Chen's expression grew thoughtful. "You know," he said when she had finished, "the foundation just acquired a building in Queens as part of a tax arrangement. We were planning to use it for office space, but a music school would be a much better fit for the neighborhood." Maya stared at him. "Are you serious?" "Completely," Chen assured her. "We'd need to work out the details, of course. Budget, staffing, curriculum, but the basic concept is solid, and you've proven you can turn ideas into reality." "I've been saving some of my performance fees," Maya said quickly. "I could contribute to the startup costs." Chen shook his head, smiling. "Keep your money. Consider this the foundation's investment in the next generation of Maya Rodriguez's." Zoe excused herself with a satisfied smile, leaving Maya and Chen to discuss the practicalities of the new project. As they talked, Maya felt a sense of things coming full circle. What had begun with a condescending joke had led to opportunities not just for her, but potentially for countless young musicians who might otherwise never get the chance to develop their talents. Later that night, after all the guests had gone and the cleanup crew was dismantling the reception, Maya returned to the empty concert hall. She stood on the stage alone, looking out at the rows of vacant seats, still feeling the echo of the applause that had filled the space hours earlier. From the Waitress tray to Carnegie Hall in 1 year. It seemed impossible, yet here she was. She sat down at the piano one last time, playing a few quiet notes that resonated in the empty hall. The same hands that had carried plates and filled water glasses now created music that moved people to tears. The same person who had once felt invisible was now being seen and heard on one of the world's most prestigious stages. As Maya gathered her things and prepared to leave, she thought about all the invisible people still out there. The waiters and janitors, the retail workers and delivery drivers, the countless individuals with talents and dreams that the world hadn't yet recognized. Her mother had always told her that everyone has gifts. Some just need a little more help unwrapping them. The trick was to be ready when opportunity knocked, and if it didn't knock, to build your own door and knock on it yourself. Tomorrow, Maya would begin work on her community music school. Tonight she would seal